In today's video, I'm going to be showing you guys how to implement Mapbox maps within your Flutter application. We're going to be taking a look at how to integrate Mapbox maps within our Flutter application for both Android and iOS. And then besides this, I'm going to be showing you how to display the map on the user's device, how to display the user's location on the map, how to track or manipulate the camera's position as the user's position updates so that we keep following it. And then finally, I'm also going to be showing you how to place custom markers on the map for any key areas that you might want to highlight. So with that said, let's get into the video. So before we get started, I'd just quickly like to mention the links to all of the resources that I mentioned within this video, as well as the link to the source code can be found in the description below. So feel free to take a look at it if you want to access them. So with that said, let's actually, before we begin coding, take a look at the dependencies. So we're going to be using a couple of packages, and I'm going to be explaining to you what each of these packages we are going to be using for. So firstly, we need the Mapbox Maps Flutter package. And this is basically the Mapbox Maps SDK that's provided to us by them so that we can integrate Mapbox within our Flutter application. So let's copy this, come back, come to pubspec.yaml, and then go to the dependency section and paste it here under the Cupertino icons like so. Once this is done, to actually work with Mapbox, we are going to be requiring an API key. And since this API key is sensitive information, I do not want to commit this to a public repo or actually keep track of it within my version control system. So to mitigate this, what I'm going to be doing is using a .env file within my Flutter project and then placing the API key within it. And then to access this value, I'm going to be using the flutter.env package, which is basically going to allow me to work with these .env files and then access the data within them. So let's copy this, come back and paste it like so. And finally, since we want to display the user's location on the device and get access to it, and then manipulate the camera as the user's position changes, we're also going to be using the geolocator package, which, as the name suggests, basically allows us to interact with the location clients that are available on iOS and Android and extract location data from them. So let's copy this, come back and paste them in. With this done, the next thing that I'm going to be doing is quickly creating the .env file, which is going to store our Mapbox API key. So within the root of my project, I'm going to create a new file. I'm going to call it .env. And then within this, I am going to basically define the Mapbox access token like so. And then what is the value for this going to be? Well, to get an access token for Mapbox, what you can do is come to firstly mapbox.com, as you can see. And then from here, you can go to account. You'll have to get started for free first. So you'll have to create an account. Once you've created an account, you'll also have to provide a credit card for payment information, but don't worry, they provide a very generous free tier, so it's going to be a long time before they charge you anything. And to prove this to you, what I'm going to be doing is showing you that once you have registered an account and you have accessed console.mapbox.com, you can see that you are not going to be charged till you reach 25,000 monthly active users. So if your app has anything under 25,000 monthly active users, then Mapbox is not going to cost you anything. So now that we've cleared that out of the way, the next thing that we're going to be doing is taking a look at where we can get the actual access token. So if you take a look on the right side of the actual web app that's provided to us by console.mapbox.com, you can see that there it says default public token. We can just copy this, come back to our .env file, paste it here. And once we've done that, that's pretty much all we had to do from the actual console.mapbox.com side of things. So with this done, what we can do is minimize the browser window and come back and do a bit more of setup that we need to do for Android and iOS, specifically for our project, in order for this to function as intended. So the first thing that we are going to be doing is taking a look at the iOS side of things. So for iOS, we need to add a couple of different permission clauses. So what you have to do is come to iOS, and then from here you have to come to runner, and then .info.plist file. And within this dictionary, we have to place some certain permission clauses. So let me actually copy those in and then tell you what they do. So runner info.plist, and then basically we need the following, which is an NS location when it's usage description. And this basically tells the operating system that, hey, our app wants to request the user's permission, and then it's going to display the appropriate dialog. And then if the user allows us to access their location, then we're going to be able to access it through our actual application. So it's necessary that you add the following key string value pair within the info.plist file. And if you're wondering where you can get access to, if you don't want to download the source code, you can actually come to the Mapbox _maps_flutter pub.dev page, scroll down all the way to where it says the actual Android setup and iOS setup. And here you can see it's the same key string here. So now that this is done, what we're going to be doing is closing down the info.plist file. And that's pretty much all we have to do for the iOS side of things. And now for Android, there's a couple of things we have to do. The first thing is that for Android, we need to come to app source main Android manifest.xml, and we have to copy these two use permission clauses here and then paste them in like so. Once this is done, that's pretty much all of the setup we had to do for Mapbox. But since we're also using the geolocator package, we need to do a bit of setup for this as well. So what's the setup for this? Well, on Android, what we need to do is basically change the compile SDK version, and I'll show you where that is. So you come back to the actual Android folder, and then from here, you are going to go to app, and then where it says build.gradle, so the app level build.gradle file. And here, you're going to scroll to where it says compile SDK, and you're going to set that to 34, like so. And that's pretty much all we had to do. And then with this done, we are going to be adding a couple of permissions. We've already added some of these, so let's take a look at which ones we need to add now. So let's go back to the Android manifest.xml. And here, as you can see, it says that we've added the access find location and access course location. So we need to do access background location if you want access to the location or the user in the background, and then do command save. And that's pretty much all we had to do. So now with this done, that's pretty much all of the setup we had to do for the Android side of things. So I can close it down, and now we can go to iOS. For iOS, we have to add the NS location when it's uses description, which we've already done because we did that for the Mapbox maps dependency setup. And then we have to do the specific thing in the post install section of our pod file. And why are we doing this? Well, because I do not want access to the user location in the background, so I'm just going to be telling the actual Xcode project, hey, I don't need access to it. But if you want, then you might want to read the documentation here and see how you can configure the project so that you also get location updates in the background. So let's do this. Let's go back to iOS. And then from here, let's open up the pod file. Then scroll down to where it says installer.projects.target.each. And then basically, we're going to copy from if clause to these two end clauses, and then come back, and then we're going to paste it here like so and do command save. So this is practically what you have to paste in, and I'm going to add some spaces so that it's easier for you guys to deduce what was the stuff that we added. So with this done, let's do command save. Let's come back to main.dart, and let's just quickly clean up project a little bit, and then we can actually test run our project to see if everything was configured properly. So let's minimize the browser window. In the main.dart file, I am going to remove all of the comments. And once I've removed all of the comments, I'm also going to remove the my homepage class and the my homepage state class. We don't need that. And then I am going to come to my lib folder. I'm going to create a new folder here called pages, underneath of which I'm going to create homepage.dart. I'm going to create a stateful widget. I'm going to call it homepage. And then here I'm going to return a scaffold. And with this done, let's do command save. Let's close this down, come back to the material app widget and set its home property to homepage. And that's pretty much all we had to do. I'll just quickly change the import statement to be a relative import. So with this done, I'll quickly select the correct target for where I want to run my application. So it's going to be this iPhone 16 Pro Max simulator. And then we can start debugging our application. So wait for the application to build and run on the actual device. And if any issues occur, I'll also show those to you. But fingers crossed, once it's running, then I'll resume the video. Welcome back, everybody. As you can see, all we're seeing on the simulator screen is a blank white page. So this means our project built successfully and it's running on the simulator. So we can proceed to the next step, which is to show the actual map. So before we can actually show the map, there's a couple of other steps we need to do, and that's basically set up the actual Mapbox SDK and provide it with the proper API key. So to do that, within my main.dart file, I'm going to create a function. It's going to be return type future void. I'm going to call it setup, and then I'm going to say it's going to be async, and I'll open up the function's body. Within this, the first thing that we need to do is load the .env file that we had stored within the root of our project. So I'm going to do await.env.load, and then here the file name is going to be .env, like so, and that's pretty much all we had to do. Then within the main function, I'm going to mark that as async, And before we run our application, I'm going to do await, and we're going to wait for the setup to complete. Once this is done, the last thing that we're going to be doing is initializing Mapbox. So to do that, I will do Mapbox options, and this actually comes from the Mapbox map package. And here we're going to do Mapbox options dot set access token, and then we're going to do .env, and then here we're going to basically enter the actual key that corresponds to the actual API key value. So that is Mapbox access token. So let's copy that, come back, paste this in, and I'm going to add an exclamation mark here because I know this value is not going to be null. So with this, let's do command save. Let's reload our application and make sure that nothing's broken and it's working as intended. So with this done, now we can actually close the main.dart file and come back to our homepage.dart file. And here is where we're going to be doing everything. So the first thing that we're going to be doing is actually displaying the map. So that's very simple. All we have to do is come to our scaffold and define its body property. And I'm going to set the body property to be Mapbox widget, which is map widget. There we go. And it comes from Mapbox. With this done, we'll do command save. And as soon as I do this, you can see that now the map is being displayed on the simulator. And it's beautiful to take a look at. It's completely zoomed out. So there's a couple of things we need to fix, but at least we can see that the map's being displayed. To rotate the cube, you can just click on the simulator screen and scroll, and it's going to rotate as you drag the mouse. To zoom in and out, you can hold the Alt or Option key and then drag the mouse, and you can zoom in and out. And then that's pretty much all you need to know for now. So the next thing that I'd like to do is basically show you a couple of other things we need to keep in mind when working with Mapbox. The first is how to get access to the actual controller instance that this map widget provides us so that we can manipulate it through code. So to do that, what you can do is the following. The map widget actually has a function that gets called when the map is created. And it's called onMapCreated, and it has a bunch of different callback functions that you can take a look at, but we're only concerned with this. It gives us a controller, and we can use this controller to programmatically interact with this map. So what I'm going to do is actually save this controller within an actual variable. So at the top of my homepage state, here I'm going to create a variable, and it's going to be of type Mapbox map, and it's going to be optional, and I'm going to call this Mapbox map controller like so. And then within the onMapCreated, I'm going to call setState and set the Mapbox map controller equals to controller like so. And that's pretty much all we had to do. So with this done, the next thing that we're going to be doing is actually taking a look at how can we display the user's location on the map. So that's very simple to do as well. What I'm going to do is firstly create a function, and I'm going to call this underscore onMapCreated. And then this is basically going to be a substitute for this function. And as you can see, onMapCreated basically gives us a Mapbox map as an argument. So I'll say this is controller, and then I'll open up this function's body. Then I'll copy up whatever's here, put that within the actual onMapCreated function, and take this and set this to be the actual function that gets called when onMapCreated is called. There we go. So now within this function, once the map gets created, I want to manipulate the map so that it shows the user's location, and it's very simple to do. What we're going to be doing is basically accessing the Mapbox map controller, and then we're going to do location. And then here, we're going to do update settings. And then here, the location settings are going to be of type location component settings. And then here, we're going to set the enabled property to true. And as soon as I do that and I do command save, and then you'll also have to restart the application, you are going to see that if you scroll around the map, once you've actually given it the permission to track the user's location, so I'll do allow while using the app, and you scroll around a bit, you're going to see that there we go, the user is being displayed. If I zoom in, as you can see, and let me zoom in a bit more, there we go, the user is being shown to us. The next thing that I'll do is actually also say that the actual user pin needs to basically pulse a little bit. So for that, what you can do is do pulsing enabled, and you can set it to true. And to change the color of this pin or change the actual way it functions, you can take a look at the other properties that you have available on the location component settings. And this way you'll be able to manipulate this pin. But if I restart the app once again, you can see that now our pin is actually pulsing. So now we are actually taking a look at the user's position. So now with this done, the next thing that I'm going to do is actually show you that currently, if the user is moving, the actual camera doesn't track their movement. And let's do this. Let's keep on zooming in, as you can see. And as you can see, the user's moving, but the camera isn't updating and following the user's position. So now we're going to be taking a look at that, how we can actually interact with the camera that's on this Mapbox map, manipulate it to actually keep following the user. So to do that, we're going to be using the geolocator package. And the reason for that is because I wasn't able to find a native way within the actual Mapbox SDK through which I can access the actual user's latitude and longitude positional coordinates and then use them to then manipulate the camera's position. So to get access to the actual user's raw coordinates, we're going to be using the geolocator plugin. So how can we do that? Well, it's going to be very simple. The first thing that we're going to be doing is basically creating a function which returns future void, and it's going to be called setup position tracking, like so. And it's going to be an async function, and I'll open up the function's body. Within this function, we'll like to do a couple of things. Firstly, I'll create a Boolean value, and it's going to be basically, is the service enabled or not? And this refers to the navigational services. So did we have those available on our device? And then after that, I'm also going to basically create a location permission variable called permission, like so, and do command save. Once this is done, we're going to check to see if the service is enabled. To do that, I will do service enabled is equals to await, and then we can do geolocator dot, and then we can do is location services enabled. Once this is done, the next thing that we need to do is make sure that if the services are not enabled, then we just return an error saying that the location services are disabled and we cannot proceed any further. Once this is done, the next thing that we need to do is request the permission from the user. So that's pretty simple. All we have to do is permission is equals to, and then I can do await geolocator dot, and then I can do check permission, like so. And then I'll have an if clause. So if the permission is equals to, and then I can do location permission dot, and I can do denied. Then what we can do is request the permission. So for that, I will do permission is equals to await, and then we can do geolocator dot request permission. And if it's the case that we are still denied, then I will just basically copy this if clause, paste it in here. But this time, if we are denied once again, I'm just going to return an error saying that the location permissions were denied. And there is also a specific instance where the user basically specifically denies the permissions forever. And in that case, even if we request permission, the actual dialog is not going to be displayed to the user to provide the actual permissions to access the user's location. For that, what they'll have to do is actually specifically go to the app's settings and actually allow the app to access the locations from there. So if that's the case, then we'll have another if clause, and this is going to be outside, and it's going to be if permission is equals to location permission dot denied forever. Then what we can do is the following, which is return future.error, and just say that the location permissions are permanently denied. So if none of this happens, then we can be pretty certain that now we have access to the location services and that the location permissions have been granted to us. So now we can actually define a location settings variable. It's going to be called location settings. It's going to be equal to location settings. And all of this is basically coming from the geolocator package. And I'm going to say that the accuracy, and we're getting an error here, which is saying that the location settings is defined in the libraries geolocator and Mapbox. So what it's basically telling me here is that, hey, this location settings class is within the geolocator package and Mapbox as well. So which one are you referring to? Well, an easy fix for this could be that we can go to the top, and I can say that when you import the geolocator package, import it as GL, and when you import Mapbox, import it as MP. And with this done, all of our code is now going to have red squiggly lines, but we'll quickly fix them. So this Mapbox map comes from MP, so Mapbox. This map widget also comes from Mapbox, so let's do mp.mapWidget. Then this Mapbox on map created Here it also comes from Mapbox controller. Then the location component settings also come from Mapbox. So let's do that. Then finally we come to set up position tracking. So this location permission comes from the geolocator package. So gl.location permission. This gl also here. And then within this function, it's gl everywhere. So I'll copy this and paste it everywhere. Nowhere here are we accessing the Mapbox package. There we go. So that pretty much fixes everything for us. Then I can do location settings is equals to, and I can do we can do the accuracy here is going to be gl.location accuracy dot, and you can select the best one that you want. I'm going to use high. And then after this, we are also going to do the distance filter, which is 100. And that's pretty much all we had to do. So the distance filter basically defines how much of a position change needs to happen for us to be notified that the user's position has changed. So once this is done, the next thing that we're going to be doing is actually now creating a stream through which we can listen to the location changes of the user and then change the camera position on the actual map. So the first thing that I'm going to do is come to the top, and I'm going to basically create a stream subscription, which is going to be optional. And I'm going to call this the user's position stream, like so. Once this is done, I'm going to create the init state function, which for now is not going to do anything besides call super.initState and dispose. And within the dispose function, I'll basically, before I dispose this widget, cancel the position stream so that we don't get any error or memory leaks. So with this done, that's pretty much it. Now within the init state, I'm going to call setup position tracking, like so, and that's all we had to do. So now when the actual home page gets created, init state is going to be called, and it's going to call the setup position tracking function, which is going to go ahead and request the user's permission, check if the location services are enabled, come to the very bottom, and then set up an actual listener function so that we get periodic updates on the position of the user changing. And let's actually take a look at how to do that. So it's going to be very simple. All we're going to be doing is firstly ensuring that if for some reason we already had a stream, we cancel it. And then we set the user position stream is equals to, and then we basically do gl.geolocator dot, and we do get position stream. And we give it the location settings that we had already defined. And then with this, I am going to tack on the listen function to this. And then we receive any data, we run the following function, and then I'm going to add a semicolon to command save. So with this done, this data is basically going to be of type position. And this position comes from geolocator.position. So this is not the actual position object that comes from Mapbox. So just to differentiate that, I've done this, and I'm going to call this position to command save. And then we can come here, we can say if the position is not null, then just print the position to the console. So with this done, let's reload our application. We had already provided the actual permissions. So now you can see that as the user's location changes, we are getting these print statements printed to the debug console. So everything seems to be working as intended. So the next thing that I'm going to be doing is the following. Now that we have access to the position, how can I use this position to then manipulate the camera's position? And that's very easy. First thing we're going to make sure is that the position is not null and that the controller that we had created, which is Mapbox map controller, that's not null as well. So if it's the case that both of these values are not null, then we're going to be doing the following. We'll access our Mapbox map controller and we're going to set the actual camera on it. And then here we need to provide the actual camera options. And let's actually add a nullifier operator here as well. And then the camera option actually comes from MP, so Mapbox.camera options. There we go. And here we define all of the stuff that we need to define. So we need to define a point. This point comes from Mapbox. And then we need to define the zoom of our camera. And we can define bearing and pitch and everything like that. You can test those out. But for now, we'll only work with point and zoom. So the center basically points to the center of where the camera is focusing. And this center is going to be of type point, so mp.point. And then the point takes in coordinates, and these coordinates are of type mapbox.position. And this position object then takes in longitude and latitude positions, which we can access from the actual position that's being passed to us in this listener function down here. As you can see, this gl.position. So here I'm going to do position dot, and then we are going to do longitude. And then similarly, we're going to do position dot latitude. And let's do command save. So with this done, the final thing that we need to do is on the camera option, also define the zoom. And my testing concluded that the zoom of 15 was working great for us. So with this done, that's pretty much all we had to do. So now if I reload the application, as you can see, we called the setup position tracking. And now as the user's position updates, we are tracking it. In case you guys are wondering how I am able to simulate the user's movement through the GPS, for this iOS simulator, you can do this through selecting any simulator and then coming to features, location, and then clicking on any of these options here. So currently I've set it to a freeway drive. So it's basically simulating the user having a drive on the freeway through San Francisco, I believe. So with this done, now we can see that the actual camera is tracking the user's position. So now that this is done, the next thing that we're going to be taking a look at is how we can actually change the actual appearance of our map. So to do this, you can come back to where you are defining the map widget. And here you have the ability to define a style URI. And the style URI can be accessed from mp.mapbox styles. And then you have a bunch of different styles that you can interact with. Dark, light, Mapbox street, outdoor, satellite, standard. Let's do dark because I like dark. And then let's do command save. And if we restart the application once again, now our app has dark mode enabled on it and it looks much nice. So the final thing that I'd like to do is actually display a custom marker on the actual map, and I'm going to display that at the Apple headquarters. So how can we do that? Well, firstly, what I'll do is click on the simulator, come to features, location, and select this to be the Apple headquarters like so. And then once this is done, now we're at the Apple headquarters, as you can see. So to display a custom marker or annotation, the first thing that we need to do is actually get access to an image. Could be whatever image you want. That's actually going to be the actual image that we show in place of a marker. So to do that, what I will do is within the root directory of my project, I'm going to create a new folder. I'm going to call this assets. Then here, I'm going to create a new file or folder, I should say, called icons. Then I'm going to be revealing this within Finder. And within this, I am going to be copying in an actual image. And I downloaded this actual image from Icon Finder, as you can see. So I'll copy it. You can use any .png file, paste it in. And once this is done, you can come back to the pubspec.yaml file. And we basically need to update that to include the assets/icons under our assets. So let's come down to pubspec.yaml, come to assets, and then just do assets / and then icons / there we go. So now everything that's under assets/icons is going to be made available to our actual Flutter project. And within that, we have the hqmarker.png. So now that this is done, we can come back to the home_page.dart file and do the rest of what we need to do. So the next thing that we have to do is basically within our onMap created function, define a code block that creates this custom annotation for us. So that's very simple. The first thing that we need to do is after we've updated the settings for displaying the user's location, I'm going to create a new variable and it's going to be final. I'm going to call it point annotation manager. And as the name suggests, this is basically the variable that is going to contain a reference to a point annotation manager, which basically allows us to add annotation and manage those on our map. And then what I'm going to do is do await. I'm going to do Mapbox map controller dot annotations dot, and then I'm going to do create at point annotation manager. There we go. Then the next thing I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be marking the onMap created function as async. And with this done, that's pretty much all we had to do. So once we have access to our point annotation manager, we can use it to create the actual annotation. But before we can actually create the annotation, we need to provide it with the data for what the actual image or the annotation is going to look like, and the position. The position is going to be easy. I'll show you. We just need to give lat and longs. But what about the image? Well, the image needs to be provided in the form of a uint8 list. So let's create a variable. It's going to be uint8 list, like so. And I'm going to call it image data, like so. And I'm going to be setting it equal to await, and then a function which I'm going to call load marker image. So I'm going to come to the very bottom, and I'm going to say that I'm going to have a function which returns a future of uint8 list. It's going to be called load HQ marker image, and it's going to be async. Open it up. Here I'm going to do variable, and then I'm going to do byte data is equals to, and then await root bundle dot and load. And here's the actual relative path to the image, which is assets / icons / HQ underscore marker dot PNG, like so. And then once we have access to the file data, we do return byte data dot buffer dot as uint8 list, and that's pretty much all we had to do. So now we've taken the .png file and converted it into byte data, and then converted that byte data into a uint8 list, which can then be used by the Mapbox widget. So let's come to the top and say the function here. So now this load HQ marker image function is going to go ahead, load the image, load its byte data, transform that into a uint8 list, and give that to us. So once we have access to the image data, now all we have to do is basically create that annotation, and that's super easy. All you have to do is do mp, so mapbox dot point annotation and options, I believe. And then I am going to set that equal to point annotation options is equals to, and then mp dot, like so. And that's pretty much all we had to do. So within this point annotation options, we basically define what this annotation point looks like. So to define the actual coordinates, we set the geometry point, which is mp.point. The coordinates here are mp.position. And then the longitude for the Apple HQ, I just copied this from Google, is -122. Like so. You can put in any valid longitude and latitude positions here, but we're just using the Apple HQ ones. So there we go. And then I am going to basically, for this position, or point I should say, add a comment saying Apple HQ. And then once this is done, for this actual annotation options, we also need to define the image, which is going to be image data, and then the icon size, which my testing concluded a size of 0.3 was good enough. So with this, let's do command save. And finally, now that we've created the point, we can do point annotation manager dot create a point for annotation, and that annotation is this point annotation options that we created. And that's pretty much all we had to do. So now with this done, what I'm going to do is add some comments on the code. For example, this comment states that logic for adding custom annotations. And then this is the logic for displaying user position on map. And then if I restart the application, you can see that there we go. We are seeing that custom annotation being displayed on the map. If you go ahead and remove this image data here and the icon size and reload it, you're going to see that a custom annotation will not be displayed. So you need to add these two things here. Restart, and now that custom annotation is being displayed. So with that, that's pretty much it for today's video. I hope that you enjoyed and learned a thing or two about how to work with Mapbox within your Flutter application. As always, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, leave them down in the comments below, and I'll try my best to answer them for you. And as always, stay happy, stay healthy, keep learning, keep growing, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye-bye.